Welcome to What If, Sleep Storian, where the boundaries between worlds dissolve and beloved characters step beyond the pages of their original tales. Here, in the hushed hours between day and night, a visionary artist might cross paths with a cunning strategist, their minds weaving threads of genius and ambition into a tapestry of wonder and dread. Each story begins with a simple question, what if, and unfolds into a gentle tapestry of intrigue, wonder and dreams. Tonight, we begin with something a little melancholic, a tale woven from the cobblestones of Renaissance Florence, where the air hums with the promise of art and the shadow of war. If these stories bring you comfort or spark your imagination, I'd be grateful if you'd like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. Let me know where in the world you're listening from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. So dim the lights, find your most comfortable position, and let these whispered narratives carry you softly towards sleep. The year is 1503, and Florence is alive, though not with the golden glow of romantic paintings you might imagine. No, this is a city of grit and grandeur, where the Arno River carries the scent of tanneries and the chatter of merchants haggling over wool and wine. The streets are narrow, their stones slick with mud and the leaves of horses, the air thick with the tang of smoke from forges and the faint sweetness of baking bread. Can you imagine the smell of the air back then? A blend of charcoal, wet earth, and the faint perfume of lavender from a noblewoman's passing cloak. The sounds are no less vivid. The clatter of cartwheels, the distant toll of cathedral bells, the shouts of apprentices darting through crowds. Touch the walls of these ancient buildings, and you'd feel the rough bite of stone, still warm from the day's sun, or the damp chill of an alley's shadow. This is not the Florence of your dreams, all marble and sunlight. This is a city of survival, where artisans labour until their hands bleed, where mothers barter for scraps to feed their children, and where the powerful play chess with human lives. The Medici may rule, but their grip is fragile, and every lord, every guild, every scheming mind is vying for a sliver of control. The air tastes bitter with ambition, and the threat of war hangs like a storm cloud over the hills. Into this world steps a man whose name echoes through time, a man whose sketches capture the curve of a bird's wing and the mechanics of a siege engine with equal grace. Leonardo da Vinci, his beard streaked with grey, his eyes sharp with a restless curiosity, moves through Florence like a man caught between dreams and reality. His hands, stained with ink and charcoal, are never still, always sketching, always seeking. Tonight he sits in a workshop cluttered with half-finished canvases, wooden models of flying machines and the faint scent of linseed oil. The flickering light of an oil lamp casts shadows that dance across his sketches, each one a whisper of possibility. But another figure moves through the city, his steps measured, his eyes cold as the steel of a dagger. Niccolo Machiavelli, a man who sees the world not as it could be, but as it is. A chessboard of power, where every move must be calculated, every weakness exploited. His cloak blends into the twilight, and his mind is already spinning a plan, one that will draw Leonardo into a dance of genius and danger. What would you have done in a world like this, where every choice could tip the scales toward creation or destruction? As the lamplight flickers and the night deepens, let us step into their story, a tale of art, ambition, and the shadow of a machine that could reshape the fate of Florence. Leonardo's workshop is a world unto itself. The air is heavy with the scent of turpentine and sawdust, the faint metallic tang of tools left too long near an open window. Shelves groan under the weight of manuscripts, their pages curling like autumn leaves, filled with drawings of gears, wings, and impossible machines. A half-eaten apple sits forgotten on a table, its flesh browning in the humid air. The sound of Florence filters through the shutters, a distant dog's bark, the laughter of a tavern spilling into the street, the soft patter of rain beginning to fall. Leonardo's fingers trace the edge of a parchment, his mind lost in the curve of a catapult arm, when a knock at the door breaks the spell. "Maestro Leonardo," a voice calls, smooth as velvet but sharp with purpose. "May I enter?" Leonardo looks up, his brow furrowing. He knows that voice, though it carries a weight tonight that sets his nerves on edge. "Signor Machiavelli," he says, rising slowly, his voice warm but guarded. "What brings you to my door at this hour?" The door creaks open, and Niccolo Machiavelli steps inside, his cloak dripping with rain. His face is angular, his eyes dark and unreadable, like pools of ink in the lamplight. "A matter of some urgency," he says, his tone light but laced with intent. "Florence needs your genius." Leonardo gestures to a stool, though his eyes never leave Machiavelli's face. "Florence has many needs," he says, his voice soft but firm. "And I am but one man, with hands already full." Machiavelli smiles, a thin curve of lips that holds no warmth. "But your hands, maestro, shape wonders no other could dream. I speak of a machine, a device to secure our city's future against our enemies." Leonardo's fingers pause on the parchment, his heart quickening. He has designed war machines before, catapults, crossbows, even a monstrous tank armoured with wood and steel, but always with a reluctance that gnaws at his soul. "Speak plainly, Niccolo," he says, his voice low, almost a whisper. "What does Florence ask of me now?" Machiavelli steps closer, his boots leaving faint prints on the dusty floor. "Siena grows bold," he says, his voice dropping to match Leonardo's. "Her armies muster, her spies whisper in our markets. The Signoria demands a weapon to humble them, something to make them think twice before crossing our borders. A machine of war, Leonardo, one only you could devise." The words hang in the air, heavy as the rain outside. Leonardo's mind races, conjuring images of gears and levers, of fire and steel, but also of blood and broken bodies. He turns away, his gaze falling on a sketch of a flying machine, its wings delicate as a dragonfly's. "War," he says softly, almost to himself. "Always war. Can we not build something to lift men's souls instead?" Machiavelli's laugh is soft, almost pitiful. "Souls are a luxury, maestro. Power is what keeps Florence standing. Will you aid us, or shall we seek another?" The question is a challenge, and Leonardo feels it like a blade at his throat. He knows Machiavelli's mind, sharp, ruthless, a man who sees no beauty in ideals, only in outcomes. Yet Leonardo cannot turn away, not when Florence, his home, teeters on the edge of ruin. "I will consider it," he says at last, his voice heavy with the weight of his choice. "But I will not create destruction alone. There must be balance." Machiavelli nods, as if he expected no less. "Balance," he says, the word dripping with irony. "Very well. I will return tomorrow. Think about it, Leonardo. Florence waits." As Machiavelli slips back into the rain-soaked night, Leonardo sinks onto his stool, his hands trembling. The workshop feels smaller now, the shadows deeper. Can you imagine the weight of that moment, the clash of genius and ambition in a single room? The air is thick with it, the scent of ink and oil mingling with the storm outside, and Leonardo knows that whatever he creates will change the course of his city, and perhaps his soul. The days that follow are a blur of sketches and sleepless nights. Leonardo's workshop becomes a crucible, where ideas are forged and discarded like molten steel. He draws by candlelight, his fingers cramped from holding charcoal, his mind wrestling with the paradox of his task, to create a machine of war that does not betray his heart. The air grows colder as autumn deepens, the scent of wet leaves seeping through the cracks in the walls. The taste of bitter wine lingers on his tongue as he works, the only sustenance he remembers to take. Machiavelli visits often, his presence like a shadow that never fully leaves. Their conversations are a dance of opposites. Leonardo's voice soft, searching, filled with questions of morality. Machiavelli's sharp, pragmatic, cutting through ideals like a knife through silk. The machine must inspire fear, Machiavelli insists one evening, his eyes glinting in the firelight. Siena must see it and tremble. And what of the men who wield it? Leonardo counters, his voice steady but laced with pain. What of their souls, Niccolo, or the lives it will take? Machiavelli leans forward, his hands clasped as if in prayer, though his words are anything but holy. The soul of Florence is worth 1,000 others. You know this, Leonardo. You've seen the bodies in the streets when enemies breach our walls. Leonardo turns away, his gaze falling on a model of a parachute, its silk canopy draped like a ghost over a wooden frame. He wants to argue, to speak of beauty and invention, but the truth of Machiavelli's words gnaws at him. Florence is fragile, her enemies circling like wolves, and so he draws, his hand moving almost against his will, sketching a machine unlike any he has made before, a colossus of iron and wood, its arms bristling with blades, its heart a furnace of fire and steam. The city outside continues its relentless rhythm. The markets buzz with the chatter of traders, their voices carrying the scent of spices and sweat. The Arno glitters under the midday sun, but its waters hide the filth of a city stretched to its limits. Leonardo walks these streets sometimes, his cloak pulled tight against the chill, and he sees the faces of the people, hungry, weary, yet clinging to hope. What would you have done in those narrow streets and flickering lamplight, knowing your work could save them or doom them? As the machine takes shape on paper, so does the tension between the two men. Machiavelli pushes for speed, for ruthlessness, his words like spurs in Leonardo's side. Siena will not wait, he says one night, his voice low and urgent. Every day you delay, their armies grow stronger. And every day I rush, I risk creating a monster, Leonardo snaps, his patience fraying. He gestures to the sketches spread across the table, their lines jagged with his frustration. This is not a sword, Niccolo. It is a force that could burn cities to ash. Do you not see the cost? Machiavelli's eyes narrow, but his voice remains calm, almost soothing. The cost of inaction is greater. You're no stranger to war, Leonardo. You've seen the fields of Milan, the blood on the stones. Would you have Florence join them? The words cut deeper than Leonardo wants to admit. He remembers Milan, the screams of the wounded, the acrid smell of gunpowder. He remembers his own designs, tanks, cannons, machines meant to protect but used to destroy. He turns back to his work, his hand trembling as he adds another line to the sketch, another piece to the machine that haunts his dreams. The machine grows in his mind, a beast of iron and fire, its gears grinding like the jaws of fate. It is beautiful in its way, a marvel of engineering, but its purpose twists Leonardo's heart. He imagines it on the battlefield, its blades gleaming in the sun, its roar drowning out the cries of the fallen. He imagines the fear it will inspire, not just in Siena, but in Florence herself. And he wonders, as the candles burn low and the city sleeps, whether he is creating a saviour or a demon. Weeks pass, and the machine moves from paper to reality. A forge is built in a secluded courtyard, its bellows hissing like a living thing. The air is thick with the scent of molten iron, the clang of hammers echoing through the night. Leonardo oversees every detail, his hands guiding the smiths, his voice calm but firm. The machine begins to take shape, a towering frame of wood and steel, its arms lined with blades that catch the firelight like the wings of a dragon. It is both beautiful and terrifying, a testament to Leonardo's genius and a mirror of his fears. Machiavelli watches from the shadows, his presence a constant reminder of the machine's purpose. It is magnificent, he says one evening, his voice almost reverent. Siena will kneel before it. Leonardo does not respond, his eyes fixed on the machine. He feels its weight, not just in the iron and wood, but in his soul. He thinks of the sketches he left unfinished, wings to carry men to the sky, bridges to span rivers, machines to ease the burdens of life. Instead, he has built this, a thing of war, a thing of death. The night before the machine is to be presented to the Signoria, Leonardo stands alone in the courtyard, the air cold and sharp with the promise of winter. The machine looms before him, its silhouette black against the stars. He reaches out, his fingers brushing the cold steel, and he wonders what he has done. Can you imagine the weight of that moment? The silence of a city on the edge of change, the heart of a man torn between creation and destruction. Machiavelli joins him, his footsteps soft on the cobblestones. "Tomorrow Florence will see your genius," he says, his voice low, almost a whisper, "and Siena will know fear." Leonardo turns to him, his eyes burning with a quiet fire. "And what of us, Niccolo? What do we become when we unleash this?" Machiavelli's smile is faint, almost sad. "We become what we must, Leonardo, for Florence, for survival." The words linger in the air, heavy as the machine itself. Leonardo looks back at his creation, its blades gleaming in the moonlight, and he feels the weight of a choice that will echo through time. The night is quiet now, the city holding its breath, and as the stars wheel overhead, Leonardo wonders if he's built a machine or a monument to his own fall. The presentation to the Signoria is a spectacle, though not one of joy. The machine stands in the Piazza della Signoria, its bulk draped in cloth to hide its form, but its presence is undeniable. The air is thick with the scent of damp wool and nervous sweat, the crowd murmuring like a restless sea. Leonardo stands to one side, his face pale, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. Machiavelli is beside him, his expression unreadable, though his eyes gleam with anticipation. The cloth is pulled away and a gasp ripples through the crowd. The machine is a colossus, its blades like the wings of some ancient beast, its frame gleaming with the polish of 100 hours of labour. The Signoria, clad in their robes of velvet and gold, lean forward, their faces a mixture of awe and fear. "A marvel," one murmurs. "A terror," whispers another. Leonardo steps forward, his voice steady but soft, as if speaking to the machine itself. "This is a tool," he says, his words carrying over the crowd. "A tool to protect Florence, to guard her people. But it is not a god, nor a demon. It is what we make of it." Machiavelli's lips twitch, but he says nothing. The Signoria nods, their decision already made. The machine will be sent to the border, a warning to Siena, a symbol of Florence's strength. But as the crowd disperses and the machine is wheeled away, Leonardo feels a hollowness in his chest. He has created something extraordinary, but at what cost? That night he returns to his workshop, the air heavy with the scent of rain and regret. He takes up his charcoal and begins to sketch, not a machine of war, but a bird in flight, its wings catching the wind. The act is small, almost defiant, a reminder of the man he wants to be. But the shadow of the machine lingers, its blades etched in his mind, a question that will haunt him for years to come. What if I had said no? As the stars fade and the first light of dawn touches the hills of Florence, the city stirs, unaware of the choice that has shaped its future. The machine stands ready, a guardian or a monster depending on who wields it. Leonardo and Machiavelli, two men bound by genius and divided by purpose, have left their mark on history, a mark that will linger in the stones of Florence and the hearts of those who hear this tale. And so, dear listener, as you drift towards sleep, let the cobblestones of Florence fade, let the scent of rain and iron dissolve into the quiet of your own world. What would you have done in Leonardo's place, caught between art and war, between dreams and duty? Let these questions slip away, carried on the gentle tide of this story, and rest now in the soft embrace of the night. The dawn breaks over Florence, painting the Arno's waters with a hesitant gold, though the air remains heavy with the scent of damp stone and the faint bitterness of coal fires stoked in the night. The city stirs, its people unaware of the machine now hidden in a guarded warehouse, its blades silent, but its presence a pulse in the heart of the Signoria's plans. Leonardo, sleepless, stands at his workshop window, his breath fogging the glass as he watches the first carts rumble through the streets. The chill of morning seeps through his thin linen shirt, prickling his skin, while the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer echoes like a warning. The taste of last night's wine lingers, sour on his tongue, a reminder of the hours spent wrestling with his own thoughts. Can you imagine the weight of a city's fate resting on one man's shoulders, the air thick with unspoken choices? Leonardo's mind is a storm of images, the machine's iron frame, its gears grinding like the jaws of a beast, and the sketches he abandoned, wings, bridges, dreams of a world lifted by beauty rather than crushed by war. The memory of Machiavelli's words haunts him, sharp as the scent of rain-soaked leather that clings to the air. Florence needs him, but at what cost? The city is no fairy tale. It is a place of hunger and hustle, where bakers knead dough with calloused hands, where children dart through alleys to steal scraps of bread, their laughter mingling with the cries of merchants. The streets smell of sweat and spices, of horse dung and the faint sweetness of crushed herbs underfoot. This is the Florence he loves, flawed and fierce, and he cannot turn away from it. As the sun climbs, casting long shadows across the cobblestones, Machiavelli returns, his cloak dusted with the morning's dew. His presence fills the workshop like a chill wind, though his voice is soft, almost coaxing. He speaks of Siena's growing threat, of spies caught whispering in taverns, of the Signoria's impatience. Leonardo listens, his fingers tracing the edge of a wooden model, its delicate struts meant for flight, not destruction. The air grows thick with the scent of wax and parchment, the faint creak of the workshop's beams settling under the weight of the day's heat. Machiavelli's eyes, sharp as a falcon's, miss nothing, noting the hesitation in Leonardo's posture, the way his hands linger on dreams rather than plans for war. The tension between them is a silent current, unspoken but palpable. Leonardo feels it in the ache of his shoulders, the tightness in his chest. He wants to speak of art, of invention, of machines that could irrigate fields or harness the wind. But Machiavelli's focus is singular: power, survival, the machine. The strategist's words are like a blade, cutting through Leonardo's ideals, urging him to see the world as it is, brutal, unforgiving, a place where beauty is a luxury few can afford. Yet Leonardo clings to a vision of balance, a hope that his creation might serve as a shield rather than a sword. The workshop feels smaller now, the walls closing in, the air heavy with the scent of doubt. By midday, Leonardo is summoned to a secluded field beyond Florence's walls, where the machine awaits its first test. The air here is cleaner, scented with wild thyme and the faint musk of earth warmed by the sun. The machine stands like a titan, its blades glinting in the light, its frame groaning as workers adjust its gears. The sound is a low, ominous hum, like the breath of a sleeping giant, and Leonardo feels it in his bones. The grass beneath his feet is soft, crushed under the weight of the machine's base, and the taste of dust coats his tongue as a breeze stirs the field. The workers move with nervous energy, their hands slick with sweat, their eyes darting to Leonardo as if he holds the key to their salvation, or their doom. The test begins, and the machine lurches forward, its blades slicing through wooden targets with a precision that makes the onlookers gasp. The air fills with the screech of metal and the splintering of wood, a sound that drowns out the birdsong and sets Leonardo's heart racing. He watches, his hands clenched as the machine moves, its power undeniable, its purpose unmistakable. Yet he sees not just the triumph of engineering, but the shadow it casts, a shadow of blood, of broken fields, of lives lost to the ambition of men. Machiavelli stands nearby, his face alight with satisfaction, though his eyes never leave Leonardo, searching for weakness, for doubt. What would you have done in that field, watching a creation of your own hands move with such terrible grace? The air is warm now, the sun high, but Leonardo feels a chill, as if the machine's shadow has settled over his soul. He turns away, his gaze falling on the distant hills, their slopes green and untouched by war. For a moment, he imagines a world where his machines lift men to the sky, not cast them into the dust. Back in his workshop, Leonardo seeks refuge in his sketches. The air is thick with the scent of charcoal and the faint sweetness of drying herbs hung near the window. His hands move quickly now, drawing not blades or gears, but the delicate curve of a river diverted, a canal to bring water to thirsty fields. The act is a quiet rebellion, a refusal to let the machine define him. The workshop is silent save for the scratch of charcoal on paper, the soft creak of the floor beneath his feet. The taste of an apple, bitten and left forgotten, lingers on his tongue, a small comfort in a world growing darker. Machiavelli's visits grow more frequent, his words sharper, urging Leonardo to refine the machine to make it unstoppable. But Leonardo resists, not with arguments, but with silence, with sketches that speak of life rather than death. He thinks of the people of Florence, their faces worn by labour, their hands rough from survival. He thinks of the children playing in the streets, their laughter a fragile thread in a city on the edge of war. The machine may protect them, but it will also change them, and Leonardo fears what that change will mean. As evening falls, the workshop glows with the soft light of candles, their flames casting flickering shadows across the walls. The air is heavy with the scent of wax and the faint tang of ink, the sounds of Florence muffled by the gathering dusk. Leonardo sits, his head in his hands, the weight of his choices pressing down like the stones of the city itself. He sees the machine in his mind, its blades gleaming, its gears turning, and he wonders if he has betrayed his own heart. The moral conflict is a fire within him, burning through his ideals, leaving only questions. Can a machine of war ever serve peace? Can a man create beauty in a world that demands blood? Machiavelli arrives, his presence like a storm cloud, though his voice is calm, almost gentle. He speaks of Florence's future, of the glory that awaits if Siena falls. He speaks of Leonardo's legacy, not as an artist, but as a saviour of the city. The words are a lure, a trap, and Leonardo feels their pull, yet he resists, his mind clinging to the memory of a sketch, a bridge, a wing, a dream of something better. The air grows colder, the candles burning low, and Leonardo knows that the path he chooses will shape not just Florence, but the man he will become. The night deepens, and Florence sleeps, its streets quiet save for the occasional clatter of a watchman's boots. Leonardo lies awake, the air cool against his skin, the scent of rain drifting through the open window. He dreams, not of the machine, but of a Florence untouched by war, where his inventions bring light, not shadow. The taste of hope is faint, almost lost, but it lingers, a spark in the darkness. The city waits, its fate tied to the machine, to the men who shaped it, and to the choices yet to come. As you drift towards sleep, dear listener, imagine the quiet of that Florentine night, the weight of a city's dreams resting on one man's heart. Let the scent of rain and wax carry you. Let the soft rhythm of this story guide you to rest. Where are you listening from as these whispered tales unfold? Let me know, and sleep well until our story continues. The night has settled over Florence like a heavy cloak, its silence broken only by the distant howl of a dog and the soft patter of rain against the city's ancient stones. Leonardo's workshop is a sanctuary of flickering light, the air thick with the scent of melted wax and the faint acrid bite of ink drying on parchment. The floor creaks beneath his restless pacing, each step a counterpoint to the thoughts that churn within him. The machine, now complete and hidden beyond the city walls, looms in his mind, a colossus of iron and ambition, its blades a silent promise of destruction. The taste of bitter herbs lingers from a hastily drunk tisane, meant to calm his nerves but doing little to ease the ache in his chest. The city outside is a living thing, its breath the hum of lives woven together, yet it feels fragile, as if one wrong move could unravel it all. Leonardo pauses by a window, his fingers brushing the cool, damp wood of the frame. The rain has left the streets glistening, their cobblestones reflecting the faint glow of lanterns swaying in the wind. The air carries the scent of wet earth, and the distant tang of smoke from a baker's oven, a reminder of the city's relentless pulse even in these quiet hours. Florence is not the golden dream of poets. It is a place of toil where weavers' hands bleed from coarse wool, where merchants haggle over scraps of profit, their voices sharp with desperation. The threat of Siena's armies hangs over the city like a storm cloud, and Leonardo feels its weight, a pressure that tightens his throat and quickens his pulse. Can you imagine the air back then, heavy with rain and fear, the city holding its breath as war draws near? As morning creeps over the hills, the city awakens with a clamour of bells and the shouts of vendors in the mercato. The air grows warmer, thick with the scent of fresh bread and the sharp tang of fish pulled from the Arno. Leonardo walks the streets, his cloak heavy with the damp of last night's rain, his eyes tracing the faces of the people, artisans with ink-stained fingers, mothers clutching children, old men muttering prayers under their breath. Their lives are the heartbeat of Florence, and he wonders what they would think of the machine, whether they would see it as salvation or damnation. The cobblestones are slick beneath his boots, the air alive with the hum of a city that knows nothing of the shadow growing in its midst. Machiavelli finds him in the workshop at midday, the air now heavy with the scent of turpentine and the faint sweetness of drying lavender hung near the door. The strategist's presence is like a blade, sharp and precise, cutting through the quiet of the room. "Maestro," he begins, his voice smooth but carrying an edge. The Signoria grows restless. They wish the machine would march by week's weekend. Will it be ready? His eyes, dark and unyielding, fixate on Leonardo, searching for any crack in his resolve. Leonardo turns from his sketch of a canal, its lines soft and flowing, a stark contrast to the jagged edges of the war machine's design. "It is ready," he says softly, his voice heavy with reluctance. "But readiness is not my concern. It is what we unleash upon the world, Niccolo. A machine that cuts through flesh as easily as wood. Does it not trouble you?" Machiavelli steps closer, his boots leaving faint marks on the dusty floor. "Trouble me?" he says, his tone light but laced with irony. "What troubles me is a Florence undefended, her streets filled with Siena's banners. You see a machine, Leonardo. I see survival." His words are a challenge, each syllable measured to pierce Leonardo's ideals. The artist's hands clench, his fingers smudged with charcoal. "Survival at what cost?" he asks, his voice low, almost a whisper. "This machine is no mere tool. It is a force, a storm that will sweep away more than our enemies. Have you not seen the fields of Milan, Niccolo? The blood that stains the earth when such things are lost?" Machiavelli's smile is thin, almost pitiful. "I have seen them," he replies, his voice calm but unyielding, "and I know that blood spared today is bloodshed tomorrow. Florence cannot afford your dreams, Maestro, not now." The air grows thick with the scent of doubt. The faint creak of the workshop's beams, a reminder of the world pressing in. Leonardo turns away, his gaze falling on a model of a wing, its delicate struts gleaming in the sunlight. "And if I dream of peace?" he asks, his voice trembling with quiet defiance. "If I believe a machine could lift us above war, not drag us deeper into it?" "Then you dream alone," Machiavelli says, his tone softening, almost gentle. "Florence needs your genius, not your heart. The machine is our shield. Let it be so." He steps back, his cloak blending into the shadows, leaving Leonardo with the weight of his words. The tension between them is a silent storm, brewing in the spaces where their ideals collide. Leonardo feels it in the ache of his fingers, the tightness in his jaw. He wants to speak of peace, of inventions that could heal rather than harm, but Machiavelli's words linger, sharp as the scent of rain-soaked leather. What would you have done in his place, caught between the call of art and the demands of power? By afternoon, Leonardo is called to the warehouse, where the machine is being prepared for its journey. The air is heavy with the scent of oil and iron, the clang of hammers echoing through the vast space. The machine stands like a titan, its frame towering over the workers who scurry around it, their hands slick with grease, their faces taut with awe and fear. The sound of its gears, tested once more, is a low growl that vibrates in Leonardo's chest, drowning out the distant chatter of the city. The taste of dust coats his tongue, the air thick with the heat of the forge. He watches as the blades are polished, their edges catching the light like the wings of a predatory bird, and he feels a chill despite the warmth of the day. A worker, young and nervous, approaches Leonardo, his voice trembling. "Maestro, will it save us?" he asks, his eyes wide with hope and fear. "Will it keep Siena from our gates?" Leonardo hesitates, his heart heavy. "It will do what it was made to do," he says at last, his voice soft but strained. "But pray it never needs to." The boy nods, his face uncertain, and returns to his work, leaving Leonardo with a pang of guilt. He wants to believe the machine is a shield, but he sees its shadow, the blood it will spill, the lives it will claim. Machiavelli, watching from a corner, steps forward. "They look to you," he says, his voice low, almost a whisper. "They see a saviour. Do not disappoint them, Leonardo." "And if I disappoint myself," Leonardo replies, his eyes fixed on the machine, "if this machine becomes my legacy, not my art, then you will have served Florence," Machiavelli says, his tone firm but not unkind. "That is enough." He turns away, his footsteps echoing in the vastness of the warehouse, leaving Leonardo alone with the machine and his doubts. Back in his workshop, Leonardo turns to his sketches, seeking solace in the lines of a bridge that could span rivers, a wing that could touch the sky. The air is thick with the scent of charcoal and the faint sweetness of herbs, the silence broken only by the scratch of his pen. The act is a quiet defiance, a refusal to let the machine define him. He thinks of the people of Florence, their faces worn by labour, their hands rough from survival. He thinks of the children, their laughter a fragile thread in a city on the edge of war. The machine may protect them, but it will also change them, and Leonardo fears what that change will mean. As night falls, the workshop glows with the soft light of candles, their flames casting shadows that dance across the walls. The air is heavy with the scent of wax and the faint tang of ink, the sounds of Florence muffled by the darkness. Leonardo sits, his head in his hands, the weight of his choices pressing down like the stones of the city itself. He sees the machine in his mind, its blades gleaming, its gears turning, and he wonders if he has betrayed his own heart. The moral conflict is a fire within him, burning through his ideals, leaving only questions. Can a machine of war ever serve peace? Can a man create beauty in a world that demands blood? Machiavelli's words echo in his mind, a constant pressure, urging him to embrace the machine's power. But Leonardo resists. His sketches a silent rebellion, a dream of a Florence untouched by war, where his inventions bring light, not shadow. The taste of hope is faint, almost lost, but it lingers, a spark in the darkness. The city waits, its fate tied to the machine, to the men who shaped it, and to the choices yet to come. As you drift towards sleep, dear listener, imagine the quiet of that Florentine night, the weight of a city's dreams resting on one man's heart. Let the scent of rain and wax carry you. Let the soft rhythm of this story guide you to rest. Where are you listening from as these whispered tales unfold? Let me know, and sleep well, until our story continues. The dawn creeps over Florence, a pale light filtering through the mist that clings to Arno's banks, softening the city's edges like a half-remembered dream. The air is cool, heavy with the scent of damp straw and the faint tang of iron from forges already stoked in the early hours. Leonardo stands at his workshop window, his breath a faint cloud against the glass, his hands still smudged with the charcoal of last night's sketches. The city stirs with a quiet hum. The clatter of cartwheels, the muffled cries of vendors setting up in the mercato, the distant toll of a church bell calling the faithful to prayer. The taste of stale bread lingers on his tongue, a hasty meal forgotten in the haze of his thoughts. The machine, now poised to march towards Siena's border, weighs on him, its iron heart a shadow that darkens his every step. Can you imagine the stillness of that morning, the city waking unaware of the storm gathering in its name? The streets of Florence are a tapestry of struggle and survival, their cobblestones worn smooth by centuries of feet, slick with the dew of dawn. The air carries the scent of fresh-cut herbs and the sour bite of sweat from labourers hauling barrels to the docks. This is no city of marble and myth. It is a place where widows barter cloth for grain, where apprentices labour under the lash of hunger, their hands raw from work. Leonardo walks these streets, his cloak pulled tight against the chill, his eyes tracing the lines of a city he loves but fears he may betray. The machine, hidden in its warehouse, is a secret known only to a few, yet its presence feels like a pulse beneath the city's skin, a rhythm of dread that only he can hear. Machiavelli finds him in the Piazza della Signoria, where the air is thick with the scent of damp wool and the murmur of merchants. The strategist's cloak blends with the morning shadows, but his eyes are sharp, cutting through the mist like a blade. "Maestro," he says, his voice low, almost intimate. The Signoria is pleased. The machine is a marvel, a testament to your genius. But there is talk of a demonstration, a show of its power before it leaves for the border. Will you guide it? Leonardo's heart tightens, his fingers clenching the edge of his cloak. A demonstration, he asks, his voice soft but laced with unease. To what end, Niccolo? To frighten our own people before Siena even sees it? Machiavelli steps closer, his breath a faint cloud in the cool air. To strengthen their resolve, he replies, his tone smooth but unyielding. Florence must see her strength, feel her invincibility. Fear is a tool, Leonardo, as much as your charcoal or your gears. The artist's gaze drifts to the Palazzo Vecchio, its stone walls looming like a silent judge. And if that fear turns inward, he asks, his voice barely above a whisper, if this machine becomes a chain around our own necks? Machiavelli's smile is faint, almost sorrowful. You see chains where I see freedom, he says, his words measured, each one a calculated step. Florence's enemies will not pause for your doubts. The machine is our voice, our will. Let it speak. Leonardo turns away, his eyes falling on a child chasing a stray dog across the piazza, her laughter a fragile thread in the morning's din. I built it to protect, not to rule, he says, his voice heavy with conviction. If it speaks, let it speak of peace, not conquest. Machiavelli's eyes narrow, but his voice remains calm. Peace is won through strength, he says, his tone almost gentle. You know this, Maestro. You've seen the world's cruelty. Do not let your heart blind you to its truth. He steps back, his cloak swirling in the breeze, leaving Leonardo with the weight of his words. The tension between them lingers, a silent clash of ideals that echoes in the air, sharp as the scent of rain-soaked stone. Leonardo feels it in the ache of his shoulders, the knot in his chest. He wants to believe in a world where his creations lift spirits, not crush them, but Machiavelli's truth is a blade that cuts deep. What would you have done in that piazza, standing between a dream of peace and the reality of war? By midday, Leonardo is summoned to the warehouse, where the machine awaits its final preparations. The air is thick with the scent of oil and molten iron, the clang of hammers a relentless pulse that drowns out the city's hum. The machine stands like a colossus, its blades polished to a mirror's sheen, its frame groaning as workers tighten its bolts. The sound is a low, menacing hum, a beast stirring in its sleep, and Leonardo feels it in his bones. The floor is gritty beneath his boots, the taste of dust sharp on his tongue as he watches the workers move with nervous precision, their hands trembling as they adjust the gears. A captain of the guard approaches, his armour clinking softly, his face lined with the weight of command. Maestro, he says, his voice rough but respectful. The Signoria bids you show us the machine's heart. They say it will turn the tide against Siena. Is it true? Leonardo hesitates, his eyes fixed on the machine's iron frame. "It will do what it was made to do," he says at last, his voice steady but heavy with unspoken fear. "But its heart is ours to guide. Use it wisely, or it will consume us all." The captain nods, his face uncertain, and returns to his men, leaving Leonardo with a pang of doubt. He wants to believe the machine can be a shield, but he sees its shadow, the blood it will spill, the fear it will sow. Machiavelli, watching from the sidelines, steps forward, his presence a quiet storm. "They trust you," he says, his voice low, almost a whisper. "They see a saviour. Do not falter now, Leonardo." "And if I falter in my soul?" Leonardo replies, his eyes burning into Machiavelli's. "If this machine becomes my cage, not my triumph?" "Then you will have served Florence," Machiavelli says, his tone firm but not unkind. "That is enough." He turns away, his footsteps echoing in the vastness of the warehouse, leaving Leonardo alone with the machine and his doubts. Back in his workshop, Leonardo seeks refuge in his sketches, the air thick with the scent of charcoal and the faint sweetness of drying herbs. His hands move swiftly, drawing not blades or gears, but the gentle curve of a river diverted, a bridge to connect distant shores. The act is a quiet rebellion, a refusal to let the machine define him. The workshop is silent save for the scratch of his pen, the soft creak of the floor beneath his feet. The taste of an apple, bitten and forgotten, lingers on his tongue, a small comfort in a world growing darker. As evening falls, the workshop glows with the soft light of candles, their flames casting shadows that dance across the walls. The air is heavy with the scent of wax and the faint tang of ink, the sounds of Florence muffled by the gathering dusk. Leonardo sits, his head in his hands, the weight of his choices pressing down like the stones of the city itself. He sees the machine in his mind, its blades gleaming, its gears turning, and he wonders if he has betrayed his own heart. The moral conflict is a fire within him, burning through his ideals, leaving only questions. Can a creation born of war ever serve peace? Can a man hold fast to beauty in a world that demands blood? Machiavelli's words echo in his mind, a relentless pressure, urging him to embrace the machine's power. But Leonardo resists, his sketches a silent defiance, a dream of a Florence untouched by war, where his inventions bring light, not shadow. The taste of hope is faint, almost lost, but it lingers, a spark in the darkness. The city waits, its fate tied to the machine, to the men who shaped it, and to the choices yet to come. As you drift towards sleep, dear listener, imagine the quiet of that Florentine night, the weight of a city's dreams resting on one man's heart. Let the scent of rain and wax carry you. Let the soft rhythm of this story guide you to rest. Where are you listening from as these whispered tales unfold? Let me know, and sleep well, as we drift deeper into this tale of Florence, where the air grows heavier with the weight of choices yet to be made. The sun has barely crested the hills, its light a pale shimmer across the Arno, when Leonardo steps into the streets once more. The morning is sharp with the scent of wet straw and the faint musk of river mud, stirred by the carts that rumble toward the Mercato. The cobblestones glisten underfoot, slick from the night's rain, and the air hums with the chatter of vendors, their voices hoarse from early calls, offering fish fresh from the river or loaves baked in the pre-dawn hours. The city is a living thing, its pulse uneven, its breath a mix of hope and desperation. Leonardo's cloak, heavy with dew, brushes against his calves, and the cold seeps into his bones, a reminder of the sleepless hours spent wrestling with the shadow of the machine. Can you imagine the feel of those streets? The rough stone underfoot, the air sharp with the promise of a day both ordinary and fraught with unseen danger? The machine, now fully assembled, waits in its warehouse, a colossus of iron and wood that seems to breathe in the quiet moments before dawn. Its blades, polished to a mirror's edge, catch the light of torches, casting jagged shadows across the walls. The air in the warehouse is thick with the acrid tang of oil, and the low hum of workers' murmurs, their hands moving with a nervous precision as they prepare the beast for its journey to the border. Leonardo visits it rarely now, each glimpse of a pang in his chest, a reminder of the line he has crossed. The taste of dust lingers on his tongue, a gritty echo of the forge's heat, and the sound of creaking gears haunts his steps as he returns to the city. Machiavelli, ever watchful, finds him in the workshop at dusk, the air heavy with the scent of melted wax and the faint sweetness of dried rosemary hung by the door. The strategist's presence is a quiet storm, his cloak still damp from the evening's mist. "Maestro," he says, his voice smooth as polished stone, "the Signoria speaks of a grand display, a pageant of power to rally the city before the machine marches. They wish you to present it to show Florence her strength." Leonardo's hands pause over a sketch of a water wheel, its lines soft and flowing, a dream of nurturing fields rather than breaking them. "A pageant?" he asks, his voice low, tinged with weariness. "To parade a machine of death before the people, as if it were a festival banner? Niccolo, this is not a triumph. It is a burden." Machiavelli steps closer, his boots soft on the worn floorboards, his eyes glinting in the candlelight. "A burden that will save them," he replies, his tone firm but measured. "The people need to see their city's might, to feel its pulse. Without fear, there is no unity. Without unity, Florence falls." Leonardo's gaze drifts to a model of a flying machine, its delicate struts draped in silk, a fragile hope in a room heavy with doubt. "And what of their hearts?" he asks, his voice barely above a whisper. "What does it do to a city to cheer for a machine that could burn another to ash? What does it do to me, Niccolo, to be the hand that shaped it?" Machiavelli's smile is thin, a blade's edge. "You are not the first to wrestle with such questions, Maestro, nor will you be the last. But Florence does not need your heart. She needs your mind. Let the machine be her voice, and let it roar." The words hang in the air, sharp as the scent of rain-soaked leather that clings to Machiavelli's cloak. Leonardo feels them like a weight, pressing against his chest, urging him to bend. Yet he resists, his fingers tracing the lines of his sketch, clinging to the dream of a world where his creations lift rather than destroy. The workshop is silent save for the soft crackle of the fire, the faint drip of wax from a candle burning low. What would you have done in that moment, standing in the flickering light, torn between a city's survival and the cost of your own soul? The days that follow are a blur of preparation and doubt. The Signoria's plans take shape, and the city buzzes with rumours of a grand spectacle in the Piazza della Signoria. The air grows colder, the scent of autumn leaves mingling with the smoke of forges working overtime. Leonardo walks the streets, his cloak pulled tight against the chill, his eyes tracing the faces of the people. Merchants with weathered hands, children darting through alleys, their laughter a fragile thread in a city on edge. The taste of bitter wine lingers from a tavern where he overheard whispers of Sienna's armies, their numbers growing, their spies slipping through Florence's gates like shadows. In the workshop, Leonardo's hands move restlessly, sketching not the machine but visions of canals and bridges, of machines that could harness the river's flow to feed the hungry. The air is thick with the scent of charcoal and the faint tang of the ink, the silence broken only by the scratch of his pen. Each line is a rebellion, a refusal to let the machine define him. Yet the weight of it lingers, a shadow that darkens every stroke. He thinks of the people of Florence, their lives woven into the city's stones, and he wonders if they would thank him for the machine, or curse him. Machiavelli's visits are a constant pressure, his words a relentless tide. One evening, as the sky burns red over the hills, he leans against the workshop door, his eyes sharp as ever. "The demonstration is set for tomorrow," he says, his voice low, almost a whisper. "The Signoria expects you to lead it, Leonardo, to show them the machine's heart." Leonardo's hands still, his charcoal hovering over a sketch of a bird in flight. "Its heart," he says softly, his voice heavy with irony. "A heart of iron and fire, Niccolo." Is that what Florence needs? A heart that knows only destruction? Machiavelli steps closer, his presence filling the room like a storm. It needs a heart that beats, he replies, his tone unyielding. A heart that keeps Siena at bay, that holds Florence together when all else fails. You built it, Leonardo. Now let it live. The artist turns away, his gaze falling on a model of a parachute, its silk canopy catching the candlelight like a dream half remembered. And if it lives, what dies? He asks, his voice trembling with quiet defiance. What part of me, of Florence, is lost when we unleash this? Machiavelli's eyes soften, but his voice remains firm. Nothing is lost if Florence stands. You know this, maestro. You've seen the cost of weakness. He steps back, his cloak blending into the shadows, leaving Leonardo with the echo of his words. The night before the demonstration, Leonardo stands alone in the warehouse, the air thick with the scent of oil and iron, the machine looming like a titan in the torchlight. Its blades gleam, sharp and silent, and the sound of its gears still now echoes in his mind like a heartbeat. He reaches out, his fingers brushing the cold steel, and feels a chill that has nothing to do with the autumn air. The taste of dust coats his tongue, a reminder of the forge's heat, and the distant sound of a watchman's boots on the cobblestones grounds him at this moment. Can you imagine the silence of that warehouse, the weight of a creation that could change a city's fate? The day of the demonstration dawns crisp and clear, the air alive with the scent of fresh bread and the faint tang of river water. The Piazza della Signoria is a sea of faces, their murmurs rising like a tide, their eyes bright with curiosity and fear. The machine stands at the centre, its bulk draped in cloth, its presence a pulse that thrums through the crowd. Leonardo stands to one side, his hands clasped tightly behind his back, his heart heavy with dread. Machiavelli is nearby, his face unreadable, though his eyes gleam with anticipation. The cloth is pulled away, and a gasp ripples through the crowd. The machine is a colossus, its blades catching the sunlight like the wings of a dragon, its frame groaning as workers move it into position. The air is thick with the scent of damp wool and nervous sweat, the sound of the crowd a restless hum that drowns out the distant bells. The Signoria, seated in their velvet robes, lean forward, their faces a mixture of awe and unease. A marvel, one whispers. A terror, murmurs another. Leonardo steps forward, his voice steady but soft, as if speaking to the machine itself. This is a tool, he says, his words carrying over the crowd. A tool to guard Florence, to protect her people. But it is not a god, nor a demon. It is what we make of it. The crowd is silent, their eyes fixed on him, on the machine, on the future it represents. Machiavelli's lips twitch, but he says nothing. The Signoria nods, their decision already made. The machine will march to the border, a warning to Siena, a symbol of Florence's strength. But as the crowd begins to disperse, Leonardo feels a hollowness in his chest, a question that gnaws at him. What have I done? That night he returns to his workshop, the air heavy with the scent of rain and regret. He takes up his charcoal and begins to sketch. Not a machine of war, but a bird in flight, its wings catching the wind. The act is small, almost defiant, a reminder of the man he wants to be. The workshop is silent save for the scratch of his pen, the soft creak of the floor beneath his feet. The taste of an apple, bitten and forgotten, lingers on his tongue, a faint comfort in a world growing darker. Machiavelli visits one last time, his presence a quiet shadow in the doorway. You did well today, he says, his voice low, almost gentle. Florence saw her strength, and Siena will hear of it. You have given us a chance, Leonardo. The artist looks up, his eyes burning with a quiet fire. A chance for what, Niccolo? He asks, his voice heavy with exhaustion. For peace, or for more blood? Machiavelli's smile is faint, almost sad. For survival, he says, his words a whisper in the candlelight. That is enough. He turns away, his footsteps fading into the night, leaving Leonardo alone with his sketches and his doubts. The machine marches toward the border in the days that follow, its blades gleaming under the autumn sun, its gears grinding like the jaws of fate. Leonardo does not go with it, choosing instead to remain in his workshop, where the air is thick with the scent of charcoal and the faint sweetness of herbs. He sketches tirelessly, drawing bridges, wings, machines that could lift a city rather than break it. Each line is a prayer, a hope that his legacy will not be defined by the machine, but by the dreams he refused to abandon. The city of Florence continues its relentless rhythm, unaware of the shadow that marches in its name. The markets buzz with the chatter of traders, their voices carrying the scent of spices and sweat. The Arno glitters under the midday sun, its waters hiding the filth of a city stretched to its limits. The people go on, their lives a tapestry of struggle and survival, their laughter a fragile thread in a world on the edge of war. Leonardo walks these streets sometimes, his cloak pulled tight against the chill, his eyes tracing the faces of the people, hungry, weary, yet clinging to hope. He thinks of the machine, now far from the city, and wonders what it will bring. Will it be the shield he hoped for, or the monster he feared? The question lingers, heavy as the scent of rain-soaked stone, and he knows it will haunt him for years to come. As the stars fade and the first light of dawn touches the hills of Florence, the city stirs, its fate tied to the machine, to the men who shaped it, and to the choices they made. Leonardo returns to his workshop, the air cool against his skin, the scent of wax and ink a quiet comfort. He takes up his charcoal and begins to sketch, not a machine of war, but a vision of a world where beauty triumphs over destruction. The act is small, but it is his own, a spark of hope in a city on the edge of shadow. And so, dear listener, as you drift towards sleep, let the cobblestones of Florence fade. Let the scent of rain and iron dissolve into the quiet your own world. What would you have done in Leonardo's place, caught between art and war, between dreams and duty? Let these questions slip away, carried on the gentle tide of this story, and rest now in the soft embrace of the night. Where are you listening from, as these whispered tales unfold? Let me know, and sleep well, as our story finds its rest. As the dawn's first light fades into the steady glow of morning, Florence hums with a restless energy, its streets alive with the clatter of hooves and the shouts of vendors hauling their wares to the mercato. The air is crisp, carrying the scent of fresh-baked bread mingled with the sharp tang of river water and the faint musk of wet wool from cloaks drying in the sun. Leonardo stands at the edge of the Ponte Vecchio, his hands gripping the stone balustrade, its surface cool and rough beneath his fingers. The Arno flows below, its waters murky with the silt of autumn rains, reflecting the city's restless pulse. The taste of dust lingers on his tongue, a remnant of the warehouse where the machine now waits, its iron heart silent but heavy with promise, or threat. Can you imagine standing there, the river's chill rising to meet you, the weight of a creation you cannot unmake pressing against your chest? The city is no painting, no gilded dream of marble and light. It is a place of raw edges, where tanners' hands sting from acrid vats, where mothers haggle for bruised fruit to feed their young, their voices sharp with worry. The cobblestones under Leonardo's boots are uneven, worn by centuries of footsteps slick with the morning's dew. The sounds of Florence surround him, the creak of a cart's axle, the laughter of children chasing a stray cat, the distant chant of monks drifting from a chapel. Yet beneath it all lies a tension, a whisper of war that ripples through the city like a current. Siena's shadow looms, and the machine, Leonardo's machine, is Florence's answer, a colossus of blades and fire that could save or damn them all. He turns from the bridge, his cloak heavy with the damp of morning, and makes his way through the narrow streets toward his workshop. The air grows warmer, thick with the scent of crushed herbs and the faint sweetness of wine spilled in an alley. His mind is a storm of images, the machine's gears grinding, its blades slicing through the air, and the sketches he left behind, wings to touch the sky, canals to feed the earth. The weight of his choice clings to him, heavy as the stones of the city itself. He thinks of the people he passed, their faces etched with the weariness of survival, and wonders what they would say if they knew the machine's true power. Would they cheer, Or would they recoil? In the workshop, the air is thick with the scent of linseed oil and the faint tang of charcoal, the silence broken only by the soft creak of the floorboards beneath his steps. Shelves sag under the weight of manuscripts, their pages filled with dreams of flight and water, now overshadowed by the jagged lines of the war machine's design. Leonardo sits at his table, his hands trembling as he takes up a piece of charcoal. He wants to draw something gentle, something alive, a bird, a river, a bridge, but his fingers betray him, sketching the curve of a blade, the arc of a gear. The machine haunts him, its shadow creeping into every line. A knock at the door breaks his reverie, sharp and insistent. "Maestro Leonardo," comes Machiavelli's voice, smooth as silk but edged with purpose. "May I enter?" Leonardo sighs, his shoulders sagging under the weight of the moment. "Come, Niccolo," he says, his voice soft but weary. "What new demand does Florence bring?" Machiavelli steps inside, his cloak dusted with the morning's mist, his eyes sharp as ever. The lamplight catches the angles of his face, casting shadows that make him seem both ally and adversary. "No demand," he says, his tone light but calculated. "A request. The Signoria wishes you to oversee the machine's transport to the border. They trust no other to ensure its reliability." Leonardo's hands still, the charcoal crumbling slightly under his grip. "Reliability," he echoes, his voice heavy with irony. "You mean its capacity to destroy, to turn fields to ash, to make widows of wives? Is that what you ask of me now?" Machiavelli steps closer, his boots leaving faint marks on the dusty floor. "I ask you to save Florence," he says, his voice low, almost intimate. "Siena's scouts have been seen near our borders. Their armies grow bolder by the day. The machine is our shield, Leonardo. You built it for this moment." The artist turns away, his gaze falling on a model of a wing, its delicate struts gleaming in the lamplight. "I built it because I could not refuse," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. "But every stroke of my pen, every turn of its gears, feels like a betrayal. Of my art, of my soul. Do you not feel it, Niccolo? The cost of what we do?" Machiavelli's smile is faint, almost sorrowful. "The cost is survival," he replies, his tone unyielding. "You see betrayal where I see necessity. Florence stands on a knife's edge, Maestro. Your machine is the blade that keeps us from falling." The words cut deep, sharper than the Leonardo's heart tightens, his fingers clenching around the charcoal. "And if the blade turns on us," he asks, his voice trembling with quiet defiance. "If this machine becomes a tyrant, not a saviour, what then, Niccolo?" Machiavelli leans forward, his eyes glinting like steel in the dim light. "Then we wield it wisely," he says, his voice calm but firm. "Or we fall. The choice is ours, but it begins with you. Will you see it at the border, or leave it to lesser hands?" The air grows heavy, thick with the scent of wax and doubt. The faint creak of the workshop's beams, a reminder of the world pressing in. Leonardo feels the weight of Machiavelli's words, a challenge that binds him to the machine as surely as its iron bolts. He wants to refuse, to turn back to his sketches of wings and rivers, but the faces of Florence's people, hungry, weary, hopeful, flash through his mind. He cannot abandon them, not when their lives hang in the balance. "I will go," he says at last, his voice low, almost a whisper. "But not for you, Niccolo, nor for the Signoria, for the people who walk these streets, who deserve more than blades and fire." Machiavelli nods, his expression unreadable. "For Florence, then," he says, his tone soft but laced with triumph. "We leave at dawn." He steps back, his cloak blending into the shadows, leaving Leonardo alone with the echo of his choice. The workshop feels smaller now, the walls closing in, the air thick with the scent of regret. Leonardo sits, his head in his hands, the weight of the machine pressing down like the stones of the city itself. He sees it in his mind, its blades gleaming, its gears turning, a beast of iron and fire that could save or destroy. The moral conflict burns within him, a fire that consumes his ideals, leaving only questions. Can a creation born of war ever serve peace? Can a man hold fast to beauty in a world that demands blood? As night falls, Florence settles into a restless quiet, its streets empty save for the occasional clatter of a watchman's boots. The air is cool, carrying the scent of rain and the faint tang of smoke from distant hearths. Leonardo lies awake, his thoughts a tangle of gears and wings, of blood and dreams. He imagines the machine on the border, its blades catching the sun, its roar drowning out the cries of the fallen. He imagines the people of Florence, their lives spared or broken by his creation, and he wonders if he has traded his soul for their safety. By morning, the city is alive again, its pulse quickening as the machine prepares to march. The air is thick with the scent of horses and sweat, the sound of carts creaking under the weight of supplies. Leonardo joins the procession, his cloak heavy with the damp of dawn, his heart heavier still. The machine is a colossus, its frame towering over the men who guide it, its blades glinting like the eyes of a predator. The cobblestones tremble under its weight, the air vibrating with the low hum of its gears. The people of Florence line the streets, their faces a mixture of awe and fear, their murmurs rising like a tide. A young girl, her hands clutching a loaf of bread, steps forward, her eyes wide. "Maestro," she says, her voice trembling, "will it keep us safe?" Leonardo kneels, his hand gentle on her shoulder, the rough weave of her dress grounding him in this moment. "It will try," he says softly, his voice strained but kind. "But safety is not in machines, little one. It is in us." The girl nods, her face uncertain, and steps back into the crowd, leaving Leonardo with a pang of guilt. Machiavelli rides nearby, his horse's hooves clattering on the stones, his eyes sharp as he watches the procession. "They look to you," he says, his voice low, almost a whisper. "They see hope in your creation. Do not let it falter now." Leonardo's gaze hardens, his voice steady but laced with pain. "Hope," he says, "is not a blade, Niccolo, nor a gear. If they look at me, let them see a man who dreams of more than war." The strategist's lips twitch, but he says nothing, urging his horse forward as the procession moves toward the city gates. The air grows warmer, the scent of dust and horses mingling with the faint sweetness of wildflowers from the fields beyond. Leonardo walks beside the machine, his hand brushing its iron frame, the cold metal a stark contrast to the warmth of the sun. He feels its weight, not just in his hands but in his soul, a burden he cannot set down. As the gates of Florence recede behind them, landscape opens into rolling hills, their slopes green with the last of autumn's vigour. The air is cleaner here, scented with thyme and earth, but the machine's presence is a shadow that darkens the fields. The men who guide it move with purpose, their hands slick with sweat, their eyes darting to Leonardo as if he holds the key to their salvation, or their doom. The sound of the machine's gears is a low growl, a beast stirring in its sleep, and Leonardo feels it in his bones. At camp that evening the air is thick with the scent of wood smoke and roasted meat, the faint tang of wine shared among the men. Leonardo sits apart, his hands sketching in the firelight, not the machine but a vision of a canal, its waters flowing to feed thirsty fields. The act is a quiet rebellion, a refusal to let the machine define him. Yet its shadow lingers, its blades etched in his mind, a question that will not fade. What if I had said no? Machiavelli joins him, his presence a quiet storm in the flickering light. "Tomorrow we reach the border," he says, his voice low, almost gentle. "Siena's scouts will see the machine, and they will know fear. You have done well, Leonardo." The artist looks up, his eyes burning with a quiet fire. "And what of the cost, Niccolo?" he asks, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "What do we become when fear is our only voice?" Machiavelli's smile is faint, almost sad. "We become what we must," he says, his words a whisper in the firelight. for Florence, for survival. He steps back, his figure blending into the darkness, leaving Leonardo with the weight of his creation and the choices yet to come. As the fire dies and the stars wheel overhead, Leonardo lies on the hard earth, the scent of grass and smoke grounding him in this moment. The machine looms nearby, its silhouette a dark promise against the night sky. He dreams not of blades or gears, but of a Florence where his inventions bring light, not shadow, a city of wings, not war. The taste of hope is faint, but it lingers, a spark in the darkness. And so, dear listener, as you drift towards sleep, let the hills of Florence fade, let the scent of wood smoke and iron dissolve into the quiet of your own world. Imagine the weight of a choice that could change a city, a life, a soul. Where are you listening from as these whispered tales unfold? Let me know, and rest now, as our story carries you gently toward dreams. The camp at dusk is a world of flickering shadows, where the glow of firelight dances across the faces of soldiers and the hulking form of the war machine, its iron frame a silent sentinel against the fading sky. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke and roasted chestnuts, mingling with the sharp tang of sweat and the faint sweetness of wild thyme crushed underfoot. Leonardo sits apart from the men, his cloak spread over the damp grass, his hands moving restlessly over a scrap of parchment. The charcoal in his fingers traces the curve of a river, a dream of water flowing to parched fields, but the machine's shadow looms in his mind, its blades glinting like a predator's teeth. The taste of gritty bread lingers on his tongue, a hasty meal shared with the camp, and the distant sound of a soldier's lute weaves through the murmurs of men preparing for the border. Can you imagine the weight of that evening? The air heavy with the promise of conflict, the heart of a man torn between creation and destruction. The hills of Tuscany stretch before them, their slopes softened by the twilight, but the peace of the landscape feels fragile, like a tapestry stretched too thin. The machine, now fully assembled, stands at the edge of the camp, its gears quiet, but its presence a low hum that vibrates in Leonardo's chest. The men move around it with a mixture of awe and fear, their hands brushing the cold steel as if it were a sacred relic, or a cursed one. The air carries the scent of oiled leather and the faint musk of horses tethered nearby, their soft whinnies a counterpoint to the clank of armour being polished. Florence is far behind now, its cobblestones and cathedral bells a memory, replaced by the open sky and the looming threat of Sienna's armies. Leonardo's thoughts are a storm, swirling with images of the machine's power and the sketches he left behind. Wings to lift men to the clouds, bridges to span rivers, machines to ease the burdens of life. The weight of his choice presses against him, heavy as the earth beneath his boots. He thinks of the people of Florence, their faces worn by labour, their laughter a fragile thread in a city on the edge of war. The machine may protect them, but at what cost? The question gnaws at him, sharp as the scent of pine resin in the air, and he wonders if he has traded his soul for their safety. Machiavelli approaches, his footsteps soft on the grass, his cloak blending with the gathering dusk. His presence is a quiet storm, his eyes sharp as they catch the firelight. "Maestro," he says, his voice low, almost gentle. The men speak of the machine as if it were a god. They say it will crush Siena before a single sword is drawn. You've given them hope. Leonardo looks up, his hands stilling on the parchment. Hope, he says, his voice heavy with irony, or fear dressed as hope. A machine that tears through flesh and bone. Is that what hope looks like, Niccolo? Machiavelli sits beside him, his gaze steady, unyielding. Hope is what keeps men fighting, he replies, his tone smooth but firm. Without it, they falter. The machine is a symbol, Leonardo, a blade to cut through Siena's ambition. You've forged that blade. The artist's fingers tighten around the charcoal, his knuckles white. A blade that cuts both ways, he says softly, his voice trembling with quiet defiance. It will protect Florence, yes, but it will also change her. The people will see power, not beauty. They will learn to love the shadow, not the light. Machiavelli's smile is faint, almost pitying. Beauty is a luxury, maestro. Power is survival. You know the world's cruelty. Milan, Pavia, the fields soaked in blood. Would you have Florence join them? The words sting, sharp as the cold air against Leonardo's skin. He remembers the battlefields, the screams of the wounded, the acrid smell of gunpowder. His machines meant to defend had been twisted to destroy, and now he has built another, greater and more terrible one. He turns away, his gaze falling on the distant hills, their outlines soft in the twilight. I dreamed of lifting men to the sky, he says, his voice barely above a whisper, not casting them into the dust. Machiavelli leans closer, his voice low, almost intimate. Dreams do not hold cities, Leonardo. Machines do. Tomorrow we will reach the border. Siena's scouts will see your creation, and they will know fear. That is your gift to Florence. Leonardo's heart tightens, his breath catching in his throat. And what is my gift to myself, Niccolo? A legacy of destruction, a soul stained with blood. The strategist's eyes soften, but his words are unrelenting. Your gift to yourself is purpose. You're no mere painter, no dreamer of wings. You're the man who will save Florence. Embrace it, or it will consume you. The silence that follows is heavy, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the distant howl of a wolf in the hills. Leonardo feels the weight of Machiavelli's words, a pressure that binds him to the machine as surely as its iron bolts. He wants to argue, to speak of art and invention, but the truth of Florence's fragility holds him back. The city is a living thing, its heartbeat the laughter of its children, the toil of its artisans, and he cannot let it fall. As Machiavelli slips back into the shadows, Leonardo returns to his sketch, his hand moving almost against his will. He draws a canal, its waters flowing to feed thirsty fields, but the lines blur into the jagged edges of the machine's blades. The air grows colder, the scent of smoke and earth grounding him in this moment, and he wonders if he can ever escape the shadow of his creation. Can you imagine the weight of that night? The firelight flickering on a man's doubts, the machine looming like a spectre in the dark. The morning breaks with a pale, hesitant light. The hills shrouded in mist that clings to the grass like a lover's touch. The camp stirs, the air alive with the scent of damp wool, and the low murmur of soldiers breaking their fast. Leonardo walks among them, his cloak heavy with dew, his eyes tracing their faces, young men with calloused hands, older ones with scars that tell stories of battles past. The machine stands ready, its blades catching the first rays of sun, its frame groaning as workers adjust its gears. The sound is a low, ominous hum, a beast waking from its slumber, and Leonardo feels it in his bones. A young soldier, barely more than a boy, approaches him, his hands trembling as he adjusts his sword belt. "Maestro," he says, his voice rough with awe, "is it true the machine can crush 100 men in a single charge?" Leonardo hesitates, his heart heavy. "It can do many things," he says softly, his voice strained but kind. "But pray we never need to see it. A machine is only as good as the hands that guide it." The boy nods, his eyes wide, and returns to his post, leaving Leonardo with a pang of guilt. He wants to believe the machine is a shield, but he sees its shadow, the blood it will spill, the fear it will sow. He thinks of the children in Florence, their laughter echoing in the streets, and wonders what they will become in a world shaped by such a creation. Machiavelli rides up, his horse's hooves sinking into the soft earth, his eyes sharp. "The men are ready," he says, his voice cutting through the morning's quiet. "We move at midday. Will you join us?" Leonardo nods, his throat tight. "I will," he says, his voice low, almost a whisper. "But not to glorify it. To ensure it is used as I intended, for protection, not conquest." Machiavelli's eyes narrow, but his tone is calm. "As you say, maestro. But protection requires strength. and strength requires fear. You've built both. Let it be enough. The words linger in the air, sharp as the morning chill. Leonardo turns away, his gaze fixed on the machine, its blades gleaming like a warning. "I've built more than a weapon, Niccolo," he says softly. "I've built a question, one I fear I'll never answer." Machiavelli mounts his horse, his cloak swirling in the breeze, and rides off, leaving Leonardo alone with the machine and his thoughts. The camp is a flurry of activity now, men dousing fires, packing tents. Their voices a low hum that blends with the creak of leather and the clank of metal. Leonardo walks toward the machine, his hand brushing against its iron frame, cold and unyielding under his touch. The air is thick with the scent of horses and damp earth, the taste of dust sharp on his tongue as he breathes in the morning's promise of rain. He feels the eyes of the soldiers on him, their whispers a soft tide, some awed, some fearful, some reverent. He wonders what they see in him, a saviour, a genius, or a man wrestling with his own soul. "Maestro," a voice calls, rough but respectful, and Leonardo turns to see the captain of the guard, his armour glinting in the weak sunlight. "The Signoria has sent word. They wish you to lead the machine's demonstration at the border, to show Siena our strength." Leonardo's heart tightens, his fingers clenching at his side. "A demonstration?" he asks, his voice soft but laced with unease. "To terrify our own men as much as the enemy?" The captain shifts, his gaze steady but uncertain. "To show we are not weak, Maestro. Siena's spies have been seen near our lands. Signoria believes a display of power will keep them at bay." Leonardo's eyes drift to the machine, its blades like the wings of a monstrous bird, its frame a testament to his genius and his torment. "Power," he murmurs, almost to himself. "Is that all we are now?" Machiavelli dismounts, his boots sinking into the mud, and steps closer. "Power is what keeps us alive, Leonardo. You know this. You've seen the fields of Milan, the blood on the stones. Would you have Florence join them?" The words cut deep, sharper than the blades of the machine itself. Leonardo remembers Milan, the screams of the fallen, the stench of death in the air. He had designed machines then too, catapults, cannons, instruments of war meant to protect but used to destroy. And now this colossus, this beast of iron and fire, stands ready to march, its purpose as clear as it is terrible. "I built it to save Florence," he says at last, his voice heavy with conviction, "not to glorify it. I will lead the demonstration, but I will do it my way, to show strength, yes, but also restraint." Machiavelli's lips twitch, a faint smile that holds no warmth. "Restraint is a luxury, Maestro. The battlefield is no place for it. But do as you will. Signoria trusts you." Leonardo turns away, his gaze falling on the distant hills, their slopes green and untouched by the shadow of war. For a moment, he imagines a world where his machines lift men to the sky, not cast them into the dust, a world where beauty triumphs over destruction. The vision fades as quickly as it comes, replaced by the stark reality of the machine before him. The march to the border begins at midday, a slow, deliberate procession through the rolling hills. The air is warm now, the sun high, but Leonardo feels a chill, as if the machine's shadow has settled over his soul. The soldiers move with purpose, their armour clanking, their faces set with determination. The machine rolls forward, its gears grinding, its blades catching the light like a warning. The people of the nearby villages watch from afar, their eyes wide with fear and wonder, their whispers of a soft tide that follows the procession. Leonardo walks beside the machine, his hand occasionally brushing its frame, the cold metal a stark contrast to the warmth of the day. He feels the weight of every step, the burden of what he has created pressing down like the stones of Florence itself. The fields around them are lush, the grass swaying in the breeze, but the beauty feels fleeting, as if it could be swept away by the machine's roar. At the border, a wide plain stretches before them, the land marked by a low stone wall that separates Florence from Siena's territory. The air is still, heavy with the scent of wildflowers and earth, the silence broken only by the creak of the machine's wheels and the soft murmurs of the men. Leonardo stands at the edge of the plain, his cloak billowing in the wind, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Somewhere out there, Sienna's scouts are watching, their reports shaping the fate of two cities. Machiavelli rides up, his horse's hooves sinking into the soft earth, his gaze sharp as a blade. "The moment is here, maestro," he says, his voice low, almost reverent. "Show them what Florence can do." Leonardo nods, his throat tight, and steps forward, his hands clasped behind his back. The soldiers gather, their eyes on him, their breaths held. He feels their trust, their fear, their hope, and it weighs on him heavier than the machine itself. He raises his voice, soft but carrying, as if speaking to the plane itself. "This is a tool," he says, his words steady but laced with pain. "A tool to guard our homes, our families, our city. But it is not our heart. It is not our soul. Use it wisely, or it will consume us all." A murmur ripples through the crowd, a mixture of agreement and unease. The machine lurches forward, its blades slicing through the air, a demonstration of power that shakes the earth. The wooden targets set up on the plain splinter and shatter, their fragments flying like broken dreams. The soldiers cheer, their voices a roar that drowns out the bird song, but Leonardo's heart sinks, the sound of destruction echoing in his mind. Machiavelli dismounts, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "They see it now," he says, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Siena will hear of this, and they will tremble." Leonardo's gaze remains on the shattered targets, his voice barely above a murmur. "And what will Florence become, Niccolo? A city that trembles at its own power?" Machiavelli's smile fades, his eyes narrowing. "Florence will survive," he says, his tone firm but not unkind. "That is enough." The demonstration ends, and the soldiers begin to disperse, their voices a low hum that blends with the wind. Leonardo walks away, his steps heavy, his thoughts a tangle of gears and wings. The machine stands silent now, its blade still, but its presence lingers, a shadow that follows him back to the camp. That night, by the firelight, Leonardo sits alone, his hands sketching in the flickering glow. The air is cool, carrying the scent of wood smoke and earth, the taste of roasted meat lingering from the evening's meal. He draws not the machine, but a vision of a bridge, its arches spanning a river, connecting distant shores. The act is a quiet rebellion, a refusal to let the machine define him. Yet its shadow remains, its blades etched in his mind, a question that will not fade. What if I had said no? Machiavelli joins him, his presence a quiet storm in the firelight. "You did well today," he says, his voice soft, almost gentle. "The men are inspired. Florence is stronger for it." Leonardo looks up, his eyes burning with a quiet fire. "Stronger," he echoes, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "But at what cost, Niccolo? What have I given up to make it so?" Machiavelli's smile is faint, almost sad. "You've given Florence a chance," he says, his words a whisper in the darkness. "That is more than most can offer." Leonardo turns back to his sketch, his hand trembling as he draws another line, another arch, another dream. The firelight dances across the parchment, casting shadows that seem to writhe like the machine itself. He thinks of the people of Florence, their lives hanging in the balance, and wonders if they will ever know the price he paid. The air grows colder, the stars brighter, and he feels the weight of his creation, a burden he cannot set down. As the camp settles into a hush, the night wraps around Leonardo like a heavy cloak. The scent of pine and distant rain, a quiet comfort. He lies on the earth, the grass cool against his skin, and gazes at the stars, their light a faint promise in the vast dark. The machine looms nearby, its silhouette a stark outline against the sky. and he wonders if it will bring salvation or ruin. In his dreams, he sees not blades, but wings, fragile, fleeting, lifting toward a world unmarred by war. Where are you, dear listener, as this tale unfolds in the quiet of your night? Let the stars guide you to rest, and may the weight of choices fade into the soft tide of sleep. The night at the border camp is a restless one, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and the faint acrid tang of oiled steel, as if the machine itself breathes in the darkness. Leonardo lies awake, his cloak a thin shield against the chill of the ground, his eyes tracing the faint glow of stars through the canopy of clouds. The camp is quiet now, save for the occasional crackle of a dying fire and the soft murmur of sentries pacing the perimeter. The taste of bitter herbs lingers from a tisane he drank to calm his nerves, but it does little to ease the weight in his chest. The machine looms at the edge of the camp, its silhouette a jagged scar against the night sky, its blade silent but ever present in his mind. Can you feel the stillness of that night? The air heavy with unspoken fears? The heart of a man wrestling with the shadow of his own creation? The plain stretches beyond the camp, its grasses swaying in the breeze, a deceptive calm that hides the tension of the border. Siena's scouts have been sighted, their figures fleeting shadows in the hills, and the soldiers whisper of armies gathering just beyond the horizon. The machine, Leonardo's colossus of iron and fire, is Florence's answer, a weapon meant to inspire fear, to hold the line, to protect the city he loves. Yet each creak of its gears, each glint of its blades, feels like a betrayal of the dreams he once sketched. Wings to touch the sky, canals to nurture the earth. The scent of wild thyme crushed underfoot mingles with the smoke of the campfires, grounding him in this moment, but his thoughts drift to Florence, to its cobblestone streets, and the laughter of its children, fragile as a spider's web. Morning dawns with a pale, hesitant light, the hills shrouded in mist that clings to the grass like a lover's sigh. The camp stirs, the air alive with the scent of damp wool and the low clatter of soldiers preparing for the day. Leonardo rises, his bones aching from the hard earth, his cloak heavy with dew. He walks to the machine, his hand brushing its cold frame, the metal unyielding under his touch. The soldiers move around him, their faces taut with anticipation, their hands polishing armour or sharpening blades. The sound of a whetstone against steel is a sharp, rhythmic scrape, a counterpoint to the distant call of a lark. Leonardo feels their eyes on him, their trust a weight heavier than the machine itself. He wonders what they see, a genius, a saviour, or a man haunted by his own handiwork. Machiavelli finds him there, his horse's hooves sinking into the soft earth, his cloak dusted with the morning's mist. His presence is a quiet storm, his eyes sharp as they catch the weak sunlight. "Maestro," he says, his voice low, almost reverent. "The Signoria has received word from their spies. Siena's forces are closer than we thought. They may test us before the week is out. The machine must be ready." Leonardo's heart tightens, his fingers clenching at his side. "Ready," he echoes, his voice soft but laced with unease. "It is ready, Niccolo. But for what? To scatter Siena's men like leaves, or to sow fear in our own hearts?" Machiavelli dismounts, his boots sinking into the mud, and steps closer. "Fear is a weapon, Leonardo," he says, his tone smooth but unyielding. "It holds Siena at bay, keeps Florence standing. You built that weapon. Do not shy from it now." The artist's gaze drifts to the machine, its blades like the wings of a monstrous bird, its frame a testament to his genius and his torment. "I built it to protect," he says, his voice trembling with quiet defiance, "not to revel in fear. If it must speak, let it speak of strength tempered by mercy." Machiavelli's smile is thin, a blade's edge. "Mercy is a dream for peacetime, Maestro. War demands more. You know this. You've seen the fields of Milan, the blood on the stones. The words cut deep, sharper than the machine's blades. Leonardo remembers Milan, the screams of the fallen, the stench of death in the air. He had designed machines then, too. Catapults, cannons, instruments of war meant to defend but used to destroy. Now this colossus stands ready to march, its purpose as clear as it is terrible. "I know the cost," he says at last, his voice heavy with conviction, "and I will not let this machine become a monster. I will guide it, Niccolo, but I will not let it rule us." Machiavelli's eyes narrow, but his tone remains calm. "Guide it then," he says, his voice low, almost a whisper. "But know that the battlefield is no place for dreams. Siena will not hesitate, and neither must we." He turns away, his cloak swirling in the breeze, leaving Leonardo with the weight of his words. The day is spent in preparation, the air thick with the scent of oil and iron as the soldiers ready the machine for what may come. Leonardo oversees every detail, his hands guiding the workers, his voice calm but firm. The machine's gears are oiled, its blades sharpened, its frame reinforced with wooden struts. The sound is a low, ominous hum, a beast stirring in its sleep, and Leonardo feels it in his bones. The taste of dust coats his tongue, the heat of the forge a stark contrast to the chill of his thoughts. He thinks of the people of Florence, their lives hanging in the balance, and wonders if they will ever know the price he pays to keep them safe. A young soldier, his face scarred from some past skirmish, approaches Leonardo, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and awe. "Maestro," he says, his voice rough but earnest, "they say Siena's men fear your machine. They say it's a dragon that breathes fire. Is it true?" Leonardo hesitates, his heart heavy. "It is a machine," he says softly, his voice strained but kind. "It does what we command. Pray, we command it wisely." The soldier nods, his face uncertain, and returns to his post, leaving Leonardo with a pang of guilt. He wants to believe the machine is a shield, but he sees its shadow, the blood it could spill, the fear it will sow. As evening falls, the camp glows with the light of fires, their flames casting flickering shadows across the tents. The air is cool, carrying the scent of wood smoke and roasted meat, the faint tang of wine shared among the men. Leonardo sits apart, his hands sketching in the firelight. Not the machine, but a vision of a canal, its waters flowing to feed thirsty fields. The act is a quiet rebellion, a refusal to let the machine define him. Yet its shadow lingers, its blades etched in his mind, a question that will not fade. What if I had refused? Machiavelli joins him, his presence a quiet storm in the flickering light. "The men are restless," he says, his voice low, almost gentle. "They speak of Siena, of battles to come. Your machine gives them courage, Leonardo. You've done more than you know." Leonardo looks up, his eyes burning with a quiet fire. "Courage," he echoes, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "Or a false promise? What courage is there in a machine that could burn a city to ash?" Machiavelli's smile is faint, almost sad. "The courage to survive," he says, his words a whisper in the firelight. "You've given Florence a chance, Maestro. That is more than most can claim." Leonardo turns back to his sketch, his hand trembling as he draws another line, another dream. The firelight dances across the parchment, casting shadows that seem to writhe like the machine itself. He thinks of the children in Florence, their laughter a fragile thread, in a city on the edge of war, and wonders what they will become in a world shaped by his creation. The air grows colder, the stars hidden by clouds, and he feels the weight of his choice, a burden he cannot set down. The next morning, a messenger arrives, his horse lathered with sweat, his face pale with urgency. The air is thick with the scent of dust and horses, the sound of hoofbeats a sharp counterpoint to the camp's quiet. "Maestro, Signor Machiavelli," the messenger says, his voice trembling. "Siena's forces have been sighted, less than a day's march from here. They know of the machine, their scouts have spread word, and their commanders are preparing to meet it." Leonardo's heart lurches, his hands clenching the edge of his cloak. "Meet it?" he asks, his voice low, almost a whisper. They would face it, knowing its power. The messenger nods, his eyes wide. They say their numbers are great, Maestro. They believe they can overwhelm it. Machiavelli's eyes gleam, his voice sharp with purpose. Then we show them they are wrong, he says, his tone unyielding. The machine will break their will before a single arrow flies. Leonardo, you must prepare it for battle. The artist's breath catches, his gaze drifting to the machine, its blades glinting in the morning light. Battle, he murmurs, his voice heavy with dread. I built it to prevent war, Niccolo, not to wage it. Machiavelli steps closer, his voice low, almost intimate. You built it to save Florence, he says, his words a blade that cuts through Leonardo's doubts. Now is the moment. Show Siena the cost of their ambition. The camp erupts into action, the air alive with the clatter of armour and the shouts of men. Leonardo moves among them, his hands guiding the workers as they ready the machine, his voice calm but strained. The gears are checked, the blades oiled, the furnace stoked with wood until it glows like a dragon's heart. The sound is a low roar, a beast awakening, and Leonardo feels it in his chest, a pulse that drowns out the world. The taste of smoke coats his tongue, the heat of the forge a stark contrast to the chill of his fear. As midday approaches, the plain is transformed into a stage for war. The soldiers form ranks, their armour glinting in the sun, their faces set with determination. The machine stands at the centre, its frame towering over the men, its blades like the wings of a monstrous bird. Leonardo stands beside it, his cloak billowing in the wind, his heart heavy with the weight of what is to come. The air is thick with the scent of wildflowers and earth, the silence broken only by the creak of the machine's wheels and the soft murmurs of the men. He feels their eyes on him, their trust a burden he cannot escape. Machiavelli rides up, his horse's hooves sinking into the soft earth, his gaze sharp as a blade. The moment is now, Maestro, he says, his voice low, almost reverent. Show Siena what Florence can do. Leonardo nods, his throat tight, and steps forward, his hands clasped behind his back. The soldiers gather, their breaths held, their eyes fixed on him. He raises his voice, soft but carrying, as if speaking to the plain itself. This is a tool, he says, his words steady but laced with pain. A tool to guard our homes, our families, our city. But it is not our heart. It is not our soul. Use it wisely, or it will consume us all. A murmur ripples through the ranks, a mixture of agreement and unease. The machine lurches forward, its blades slicing through the air, a demonstration of power that shakes the earth. The wooden targets set up on the plain splinter and shatter, their fragments flying like broken dreams. The soldiers cheer, their voices a roar that drowns out the birdsong. But Leonardo's heart sinks, the sound of destruction echoing in his mind. Machiavelli dismounts, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. They see it now, he says, his voice low, almost a whisper. Siena's scouts will carry this to their commanders, and they will know fear. Leonardo's gaze remains on the shattered targets, his voice barely. And what will we become, Niccolo? A city that lives by fear alone? Machiavelli's smile fades, his eyes narrowing. We will survive, he says, his tone firm but not unkind. That is enough. The demonstration ends, and the soldiers begin to disperse, their voices a low hum that blends with the wind. Leonardo walks away, his steps heavy, his thoughts a tangle of gears and wings. The machine stands silent now, its blades still, but its presence lingers, a shadow that follows him back to the camp. That night, by the firelight, Leonardo sits alone, his hands sketching in the flickering glow. The air is cool, carrying the scent of wood smoke and earth, the taste of roasted meat lingering from the evening's meal. He draws not the machine, but a vision of a bridge, its arches spanning a river, connecting distant shores. The act is a quiet rebellion, a refusal to let the machine define him. Yet its shadow remains, its blades etched in his mind, a question that will not fade. What if I had said no? Machiavelli joins him, his presence a quiet storm in the firelight. "You did well today," he says, his voice soft, almost gentle. "The men are inspired. Florence is stronger for it." Leonardo looks up, his eyes burning with a quiet fire. "Stronger," he echoes, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "But at what cost, Niccolo? What have I given up to make it so?" Machiavelli's smile is faint, almost sad. "You've given Florence a chance," he says, his words a whisper in the darkness. "That is more than most can offer." Leonardo turns back to his sketch, his hand trembling as he draws another line, another arch, another dream. The firelight dances across the parchment, casting shadows that seem to writhe like the machine itself. He thinks of the people of Florence, their lives hanging in the balance, and wonders if they will ever know the price he paid. The air grows colder, the stars hidden by clouds, and he feels the weight of his creation, a burden he cannot set down. As the night deepens, Leonardo lies on the earth, the scent of grass and smoke a faint comfort in the darkness. The machine looms nearby, its silhouette a dark promise against the sky. In his dreams he sees not blades, but wings, fragile, fleeting, lifting toward a world unmarred by war. The taste of hope is faint, almost lost, but it lingers, a spark in the darkness. And so, dear listener, as you sink into the quiet of your own night, let the plain of Tuscany fade, let the weight of iron and fire dissolve into the soft tide of dreams. Imagine a world where genius serves not war, but peace, where the heart of a city beats with hope. Where are you, as this tale weaves through the shadows? Let me know, and rest now, carried gently towards sleep by the whisper of this story. The dawn breaks over the Tuscan plain with a fragile light, the sky streaked with clouds that cast fleeting shadows across the earth. The air is sharp with the scent of dew-soaked grass and the faint tang of iron from the machine, now poised at the border like a titan awaiting its moment. Leonardo stands alone, his cloak heavy with the morning's chill, his hands tracing the worn edge of a parchment tucked inside his sleeve, a sketch of a wing, a dream of flight that feels further away than ever. The camp stirs behind him, the clatter of armour and the low murmur of soldiers blending with the distant call of a lark. The taste of stale bread lingers from a hasty meal, a bitter reminder of the days spent marching toward this moment. Can you feel the weight of that dawn, the air thick with the promise of conflict, the heart of a man caught between his creation and his conscience? The machine looms at the centre of the plain, its blades glinting in the weak sunlight, its gears silent but ready. The soldiers move with purpose, their faces set with a mix of fear and resolve, their hands gripping swords and pikes as if to anchor themselves against the uncertainty. Sienna's forces have been sighted, their banners a faint smudge on the horizon, and the air hums with the tension of what may come. Leonardo feels it in his bones, a pulse that matches the low groan of the machine as workers make final adjustments. The scent of oiled leather and wood smoke clings to the breeze, grounding him in this moment. But his thoughts drift to Florence, its cobblestone streets, its weary artisans, its children whose laughter he fears he may silence with his creation. Machiavelli approaches, his horse's hooves soft on the earth, his eyes sharp as they catch the morning light. "Maestro," he says, his voice low but urgent, "Sienna's commanders have sent an envoy." They wish to parley before blood is spilled. The machine has done its work. Its shadow alone has brought them to the table. Leonardo's heart lurches, a flicker of hope tempered by doubt. "Parley," he murmurs, his voice soft but heavy. "And what do we offer, Niccolo?" A threat, a promise of destruction. Machiavelli dismounts, his cloak brushing the grass, his gaze unyielding. We offer strength, he says, his tone smooth but firm. Your machine has made them hesitate. That is victory enough for now. Come, Leonardo, stand with me. Let them see the man who forged their fear. The artist's hands clench, his fingers smudging the charcoal on his sketch. I forged it to protect, he says, his voice trembling with quiet defiance. If this parley brings peace, I will stand with you. But if it demands more blood, I will not be its herald. Machiavelli's smile is faint, almost sorrowful. Peace is won through fear, maestro. You know this. Let us meet them and see what they offer. The parley takes place under a lone oak, its branches heavy with autumn leaves, the air thick with the scent of earth and tension. Siena's envoy, a man with a weathered face and eyes sharp with calculation, stands flanked by 2 guards, their armour glinting dully. The machine looms in the distance, its presence a silent threat that hangs over the meeting like a storm cloud. Leonardo stands beside Machiavelli, his cloak billowing in the wind, his heart heavy with the weight of what he has wrought. The envoy speaks first, his voice steady but cautious. Florence's machine is a marvel, he says, his eyes flicking toward the iron colossus. Siena has no wish to test its blades. We propose a truce, borders unchanged, no blood spilled. Machiavelli's eyes gleam, but his voice is calm. A truce, he says, his tone measured. And what guarantees Siena's word? Your armies are close, your scouts bold. The envoy's jaw tightens, but he nods. We withdraw our forces, he says. In return, Florence keeps the machine from our lands. Let it be a shield, not a sword. Leonardo's breath catches, his gaze drifting to the machine. A shield, not a sword. The words echo his own hopes, fragile as the leaves falling around them. He steps forward, his voice soft but carrying. If Siena seeks peace, Florence will honour it, he says, his words steady but laced with conviction. The machine was built to protect, not to conquer. Let it rest. Machiavelli's eyes narrow, but he says nothing, his silence a concession. The envoy nods, his face unreadable, and the parley ends with a tense agreement, the air heavy with the scent of earth, and the faint promise of reprieve. The soldiers watch from a distance, their murmurs a soft tide, their eyes fixed on Leonardo as if he holds their fate in his hands. Back at the camp, the air is alive with the clatter of packing, the soldiers preparing to return to Florence. The machine is secured, its blades covered, its furnace cold. Leonardo walks beside it, his hand brushing its frame, the metal cool under his touch. The taste of dust lingers, the sound of creaking wheels a reminder of the journey back. He feels a strange lightness, as if a weight has lifted, but the shadow of the machine remains, a question that will not fade. What has he become? Machiavelli joins him, his presence a quiet storm in the fading light. You've done it, Leonardo, he says, his voice low, almost gentle. Siena retreats, and Florence stands. Your machine has saved us without a drop of blood. Leonardo looks up, his eyes burning with a quiet fire. Saved us, he echoes, his voice heavy with exhaustion. But at what cost, Niccolo? The fear it sowed, the shadow it cast. Will Florence ever be the same? Machiavelli's smile is faint, almost sad. Cities change, maestro, he says, his words a whisper in the dusk. As do men. You've given us a future. That is enough. Leonardo turns away, his gaze falling on the hills, their slopes soft in the twilight. He thinks of his workshop, of the sketches waiting there. Wings, bridges, dreams of a world lifted by beauty, not crushed by war. The air grows cooler, the scent of grass and smoke a faint comfort, and he feels the weight of his creation, a burden he will always carry. The journey back to Florence is quiet, the machine rolling behind them like a silent giant, its blades hidden, but its presence undeniable. The cobblestone streets greet them, the air thick with the scent of baking bread and the chatter of merchants, unaware of the shadow that marched to the border and back. Leonardo returns to his workshop, the air heavy with the scent of linseed oil and charcoal. the silence broken only by the scratch of his pen. He draws a bird in flight, its wings catching the wind, a quiet rebellion against the machine that defined him. As night falls, Florence sleeps, its heartbeat steady but changed. Leonardo sits alone, the candlelight flickering across his sketches, his hands trembling with the weight of what he has done. He sees the machine in his mind, its blades still, its gears quiet, but its shadow lingers, a question that will haunt him. What if he had said no? Yet in the quiet he finds a spark of hope, a hope that his art, his dreams, might still shape a world where beauty triumphs over destruction. And so, dear listener, as you drift into the stillness of your own night, let the streets of Florence fade, let the scent of charcoal and earth dissolve into the quiet of your dreams. Imagine a world where genius weaves hope, where the heart of a man can mend what his hands have wrought. Where are you as this tale finds its rest? Let me know, and sleep gently, carried by the whisper of this story into the soft embrace of peace. That's our tale tonight, listeners. Share your thoughts, your city, your time zone. Are you in Seoul at sunrise, Istanbul by the Bosphorus breeze, Rio de Janeiro under tropical midnight, or Sydney as dawn colours the harbour? Like this episode, subscribe if you love these shadows, keep your lanterns lit. Rest well. Until next time.